me. Let me introduce our next presenter. I'm very happy to welcome Lena Frei. Lena Frei studied both at the University of Basel, philosophy and media sciences, and then also at the Academy of Art and Design. And she will today give us a glimpse into her work, into her reflections on the connection of nature and technology in context with games. Welcome.
Thank you for that nice introduction. Also, thank you for the talk beforehand that gave us already a kind of a glimpse into artistic research. And maybe I can add something from a design perspective. So, speculative design, speculation. It's been one of those buzzwords lately where everyone's been talking about it, how we can make the world better with it. And the term was popularized by Fiona Raby and Anthony Dunn by their 2013 book, Speculative Everything. And since then, a lot of people have been talking about it, been trying to be speculative or use this as a tool. And of course, if we really think about what speculation is, it's kind of trivial. Like, speculative design did not invent the what-if questions. And in a way, all stories are speculative. And also, the term speculative futures is kind of redundant. We are not able to think about the future without actually speculating in some way or another. But, of course, as we face huge ecological and social problems, speculation can be used as a critical tool to build on existing biases and confront dissonance. By making abstract, complex issues, such as climate change, for example, tangible. And using speculation critically means not just to focus on, or actually not at all, focusing on trying to predict what the future could be like, or maybe even persuade others of what the future should be like, but really to use it critically to reflect on current issues and trends. So for example, make abstract things. For example, this project by Elliot Bishop called The Sweet Proposal, A Cautionary Tale of the Corporate City. He imagined what it would be like if the city of York was entirely run and owned by Nestle. And of course, it looks kind of shiny on the outside, but it is a cautionary tale of what privatization can do to a society with the loss of control and freedom that goes along with it. So by imagining how the world could be different, by showing kind of alternative realities and possible futures, it provokes a discussion. And that one is, of course, speculative, but it's also very much connected to the here and now. So it takes something like privatization that is already an issue and speculates on it. And another term that I would like to kind of shortly introduce is future resilience. So there's not a bunch of studies on it, but I think it's at least plausible that actively engaging with the future and with speculation can make us as a society and individuals more resilient. So less prone to what is often referred to as future shock, this personal perception of too much change in too little time. Introduced by Alvin Toffler in his 1970s book called Future Shock. And these topics are often discussed in the context of architecture or city planning, but I think speculation can really be applied everywhere in all different fields and help people embrace complexity and encourage discourse. So yeah, it can be a tool to really freely and creatively explore new ideas that are connected to our reality, but not held back by maybe some of the restrictions that a real product, for example, would have. Now, how does all this connect to computer games? A little detour, probably already we heard a lot the last few days on what games can do and should do. But I think it's important to, again, look into the narrative potential of the medium and see how it generates meaning. So, what are computers good at? We could say they're really good at assigning values to variables, at calculating and measuring. And in this line of thought, we could say that computer games kind of do the same. They are tools of rationalization. So you have beforehand ambiguous qualities that get, for example, measured, like the player's skill gets a number, or the system of rules that a game is makes the player act according to it through rewards and punishments. The player gets conditioned to follow this, and cheaters get disqualified. I think we could make that argument, but the other one that I would like to make is hopefully a bit more strong. That is that video games exist because exactly if a player interacts with the system of rules, what happens then? What happens with play? So, game theorist Miguel Sicard proposes that it's not the rules of a game that hold the meaning, but actually how the player interacts with the system, acts and reacts within this system of rules. And this is how games, I would say, can be seen as a practice and where values are negotiated. And in play, we can experience freedom. Dutch researcher Johan Huizinga, who Mary Flanagan already talked about at the opening speech, he wrote about the Homo ludens, the playing human, and looked into how play is one of the driving factors for culture. For this, he described play as a concept that eludes all strict definitions and juxtapositions, saying that play combines strict rules with genuine freedom. And in this line of reasoning, computer games can give room for subversion and critical practices, and hopefully, as I maybe show, speculation. Speaking of eluding strict definitions, with esports and virtual augmented reality, with different platforms like mobile, PC, console, video games are extremely diverse, both from a technical standpoint, but also from the audience that play it, and the places where it gets played, and basically just everything. And it's no surprise that Ludwig Wittgenstein used play or games, or Spiel in German, which kind of is both, as a way to explain his idea about family resemblance, because it really does elude all the strict definitions. So when I talk about video games, don't think of it as this like one homogeneous medium. It really is, there's so much to talk about it, and maybe I speak about one type of game more than about MMO or something. But what really differentiates digital games from other media is that they're interactive, but they are more than that. Let me take a sip. The way the player acts and reacts within this rule system and according to values. Now I actually quote Mary Flanagan. I'm glad she's here today. This means offering the player real options, or player agency, as it is called. And a game that I think illustrates this quite well is the Stanley Parable from 2013, a game that follows the story of Stanley, an employee in an office building, and he has to press buttons according to what the screen in front of him tells him. And one day the screen turns blank, and the player, or Stanley, kind of has to explore this office building. I hope I don't give any spoilers if anyone hasn't played it yet. I'm looking at Lucia. He always complains that I spoil video games that are 10 years old. But then everything that the player does gets narrated, actually before the player does it. So for example, in the beginning you have two doors, and the narrator says, Stanley went through the left door. But actually the player has a choice to follow this narration or to kind of try to resist this system that the game puts up. And of course this kind of escalates in interesting ways. It also has different endings. And it opens up many questions. It really shines a light on games as rule-based systems that really can question choice and control and agency, not just within the kind of underlying medium, but also woven into the narrative. We already heard some about serious games. I think just one thing to point out is that often gets highlighted when talking about serious games is how they can show they are also good at making complex things tangible, as we heard about speculation. And I think this, like opening up a room where someone can experience freedom, while also not kind of simplifying it, is something that speculative design and video games have in common. Now, that was too much. So how can we use speculation to make interesting video games? I would say there's two ways. One is while designing, which I will show my thesis that I worked on 3 years ago. It was about tackling the nature-culture division by making a digital game. And of course, from the start, it was clear that this dualism is nonsensical, but it was really difficult to create something that doesn't fall into either category. Like if we think long enough about anything, you can't really say if it's cultural or natural. Like the forest next to Basel, for example, it's very cultural if you think about it, how it is and how it grows and what happens there and how we perceive it as like this locus amoenus or dangerous, etc., etc. But creating something that falls into neither category was kind of difficult. So I would say I was speculating while trying to come up with design answers. For example, first I just tried to kind of latently mix the two together. And from there on, I was like, that doesn't seem to work really. And try to make new trees and see like how do they actually react to natural elements? Is it any different than the other trees that we're used to? Maybe we can even see the... It could move. Oh, sorry. It's fine like that. Yeah, just experimenting with the shaders, maybe the mesh breaks, and then also think about, you know, what happens when things don't move the way they're supposed to, or does it become alive? Is it still dead? And then kind of the same applies to you. But just to give you an idea of type of objects that I mean, kind of rebuilding a forest and seeing how to make objects that fall into neither category, where it's not clear, is it dead, is it alive, is it dangerous, do we need to protect it, or a house that moves with the wind, does it still protect me from the outside, or is it now the danger? And kind of creating these things that fall into neither category, and walking along all these dualisms that go along with the nature-culture division was kind of the goal of all these visual experiments. I don't know how many of you actually played it already in the Spielhölle downstairs. I would be really curious to see what you thought about it, if you did. Yeah, just creating a new way of looking at and being in the world. How do I? There. Cool. And of course, the other way is being speculative while playing, which actually maybe is even the more interesting one. So I am currently also working on a game. I didn't dare to show anything about it yet because it's very much still in the beginning of the phase. But the plan is to make a game that uses the ideas of agency in a sandbox game. So I want to create a sandbox game that doesn't kind of produce a probably problematic way of engaging with the world. Because if the player is the only subject that has agency, the world around them, or the game world, gets objectified. Not just the game world, the whole world. So the idea is to create a sandbox game where the sand also holds some agency, the sand, the inhabitants of the sand, where it's less about planning and strategizing and building something, but really about co-creating with the game or the other entities in the game. And yeah, as it goes for both speculation and critical games, it's not a simple way of changing the world, as it is sometimes pitched when we hear about speculative design. Or as Ian Bogost says, the very idea of changing the world as a simple principle is incompatible with the premise that games have a unique power to reject simplicity, demonstrate complexity, and help people to mistrust singular answers. So to end this talk, will the combined power of video games and speculation save the world? Probably not, but it's a very promising way of engaging with complex issues and talk about current issues and promote discussion. To open up spaces for imagination and to make experiences that can be good or bad or fun, serious, but hopefully not boring. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for this crisp presentation. Other questions from the audience? All just blown away. Then maybe let me ask one question. You said, following Huizinga, we're in the realm of practicing for reality, maybe for a better reality. So in what way, you already mentioned the new game that you're developing at the moment. So just very simplistically asked, do you think people will play this and then engage in a better way with the real world? Is that the intention? And how far do you project some kind of utopian aspect to this kind of game playing?
I mean, I wouldn't mind if people became better people while playing my game. But of course, it's a complicated matter. I think making the experiences we can in video games does help us change like how we see ourselves, how we see society, how we engage with people around us. But yeah, I don't think a game can change someone single-handedly. Although, I mean, I've had many game experiences that have changed me in a way or another. So I'm not sure.
In what way, if I may ask? In what way, if I may ask?
I guess just, and I mean, it's so interesting. I almost talked about like serious games that I don't like the term much. I think it's important that at some point we called it that to kind of show that games are more than just fun. But I mean, just like I guess as every good book has changed me in a way, just to give you experiences that can be really deep. Also with multiplayer games that I do play a lot. Of course, you have the whole thing of like happening when people are together. I can't really say like I learned this exact thing, but it's like deep experiences that influence you.
Yeah, thank you. Questions from the audience now. Please.
Just going on, following the track about multiplayer games, do you feel that you have learned, could you say that you've learned more about other people or something about yourself when playing in a multiplayer environment?
Probably more about myself. I mean, I don't know if this is the place to talk about it, but I enjoy first-person shooters a lot. Like there, especially in a competitive environment, of course, you learn a lot about yourself. I guess with every sports that, well, you need some, ways to control your own ways. But I mean, multiplayer games, I haven't really thought about it much in this setting, but I think it would be super interesting to really see what is going on there. Because like Stanley Parable, those type of games are usually single-player, kind of story-driven adventure games. And I think really looking into what happens in a multiplayer game, it's super complex, but definitely worthwhile.
Yes. More questions. There's one.
So, thank you for Yeah, thanks. I have a question in terms of the process. I'm not into speculative design, to be honest, but can you describe how you came up with the ideas of this interpretation of trees, for example?
Yeah, I think it connects to how we try to do design research at the Academy here of Arts and Design here in Basel. It's really about making a lot of variations and like seeing maybe some small thing that is interesting, and then for grabbing that and trying to really see how that works and what makes it interesting. But yeah, it's really about testing it out, making variations, seeing what works, what doesn't, and get going on from there.
Testing it out with your own or with others? Or is it just based on your own opinion, on personal preferences?
For the visual part, I would say just yourself. Also, I mean, for my thesis, it was the middle of COVID. It was kind of a lonely project, which maybe is also reflected in how the game works. But for like when I actually test the rules of a game, for example, I always have someone with me. So we usually do like paper prototypes before doing any coding, and there you can really see what works and what doesn't, but never alone then.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation. The one of the things that I think is hard for us in the game studies region is just really unpack deeply game mechanics and how they actually communicate values. And you know, I'm wondering if you, because that box of agency is a pretty big box, right? So in your upcoming project, for example, how are you thinking about game mechanics as they relate to agency and the message of the mechanics themselves?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for your question. Of course, agency, it's a nice word to. It sounds simple, but it's absolutely not. For the game I'm working on right now, the idea is that the player has. I mean, so far it can still change, but you have tiles that hold special, like they have qualities, and the player can add one of two things, like either water or light, I think. And they can also just do nothing, which sometimes yields the more interesting results, actually. And the idea, but of course I'm not sure if it actually works, is that other entities that are controlled by the computer kind of can do the same thing. So, but maybe it just becomes a huge mess. I'm really not sure yet. Yeah.
Yes. We have time for one more question. None? Yes, there's one. Ed.
Yeah, also, thank you for the presentation. I think I'm not sure, I don't really know how to phrase this. I think it's related to Annemai's original question, but about the real world conclusions to this stuff. This is totally unknown for me, and I'm not a gamer or anything, so I see these designs, I think it's really cool. And I'm into the speculative fiction side of things. I like Donna Haraway, who uses this term, and she's really into science fiction writing, and she also has this argument about it's some way of kind of improving potentially how we face the future. So maybe to ask a real question, it would be about future resilience, because I'd like to maybe know more on how does what you're doing in designing things in the realms of computers, how does that lead us to future resilience in some kind of concrete or real world way?
It's a lot of questions packed into one. I mean, I think for the resilience, just engaging with it does a lot already. Kind of making it from something really abstract into something that we can deal with and handle and change. So the hope there is that already making it a part of the project does something. For the real world, actually Ian Bogost wrote he initially wrote the book called Persuasive Games, where he talked about what games can do in this way, kind of. And now 15 years later, he wrote another article about kind of what happened to this idea. And I think one of the big dangers is that the games themselves don't do the work, as he describes it. So, like, talking to you about how games are super cool is doing the work instead of you playing a critical game and learning something. So, yeah, I'm not sure how to deal with that. I guess it's just something we have to be conscious about. And yeah, it doesn't mean the games themselves can't do any work, but the ideas of critical games is sometimes stronger than the games, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the discussion. We will, in 5 minutes, move forward and back to performance practice again, so please stay tuned.